Hello everybody and welcome to episode 2 of Fundamental Forest. Last time we left off we were discussing what we're going to do for the next area, but we will delay that for the time being because we've still got work to do on the entrance. Now, I reflected about this. I had to think about it and I thought, this building, it just isn't hitting. That happens sometimes. Sometimes you look at something and you think, we could redevelop this, or we could save a lot of time by just maybe looking at it with fresh eyes. Something I just wanted to try over here. Yes, this gives it a bit more depth. So that's with that muted colour. Let's try with the bright red. Does that look... You know what? The bright red could be quite fun there because it balances out with the maroon. Interesting. I think I'll leave that like that for now. And we'll see if we want to change it. However, I think that we are going to kill off this building and try again. So we are just going to flatten out this area, give ourselves our blank canvas back, and see where our heart leads us this time. I'm not entirely sure about these. I think I'm going to get rid of these because I thought I could have like a nice thing where they queue up there, but I feel like that it like separated the area a bit too much, and I feel like I couldn't make it work. I was trying to land textures and I just couldn't make it pop. So I'm getting rid of that. I've got these playing cards on the wall here. I like to use these to simulate signs. But here we are, we've built this little service area. We've also begun fleshing out this area outside of the park as well. So there will be additional services, obviously, like ticket services. Maybe you've got a parking you need validating. There's any number of reasons why you would have stuff outside of the gate before you got into the park. And I think also I want to surrender this area here to a building. I'm not quite sure what it's going to be, but I'm sort of imagining us stepping up to it like this and it having like an outside patio. I don't know whether there'd be food outside of the park, but perhaps there would be. You know, like a little cafe. And just giving this corner to something. We'll see. But here's where we've started. We've not fleshed out the other side yet, which is going to be the park info sort of deal that we had previously. I've copied this motif that I had here to begin fleshing this out, along with this staggered roof idea. And I think that's working really well. It's feeling very cohesive across here. I've also sunk a tree into here. The reason why I did that, and I've mirrored it on the other side as well, is because we've got these fences here. And I wanted to build into this corner over here, and it just felt weird, this coming up to here, and us having to leave a gap here for the fence when in reality the gate would just open. So if the gate's going to be open like this, they would probably leave a buffer for it to be open like that. So I conceptualized there would just be a planter here to allow for that accessibility for this gate. But yeah, I think I'm going to move on from this area, maybe move around to the other side and see what I can cook up. Hello guys, I have a secret technique to share just really quickly. If we make a fence on a slanted surface, we get a slanted fence. However, if we change that ground in any way, the fence gets deleted, and that doesn't matter what kind of fence we have on it. If we go like this, our fence is gone. And that, without hacking, without using any of the additional features of OpenRCT2 Tycoon, in the base game of Rollercoaster Tycoon 2, you can't have a slanted fence on a surface which isn't directly on the ground. but there is one way to confuse the game. This is probably a bug, but it's one of those bugs it doesn't hurt anyone. So it kind of makes me think that they just didn't care to double check. If you raise a land surface like that, so just one corner, so it's slanted all the way down, and place a fence on it, doesn't matter what fence, it can be any fence, and you grab the bottom corner of it and you pull down, it leaves the fence there slanted. I'll show you that again, like this. If it's like this, it won't work. But if it's slanted like this, it will work. I'll show you that once more. You're pulling up one corner, you're grabbing it like that, and you're pulling it down. And you can flatten this out, you can do whatever you want with this land, provided it doesn't get so close to it that it deletes it. You can do whatever you want with that land. So there's a little tip for you guys. And I learned this technique from the irreplaceable AR2910, who also does no hack NCSO. If you are looking for inspiration in this regard, you need go no further than AR2910. Can't recommend them enough. I'll leave a link to their profile in the description so you can check out the parks. Aha! So I've used this technique right here. I'll just give a quick tutorial for it in like a practical setting, because it might just be a bit unclear for some people. So you can copy this precisely, and you'll be happy forever knowing this new technique. Here we go, here we go, here we go. I'm going to get it far enough away from it that it doesn't affect the ground when we raise it up. So it's just simple as that. And then we can grab this, we can press CTRL on here, and we can grab these ones as well. And the good thing about using these paths, the reason why I like using the paths, oh, and I'll teach you the other secret technique as well. If you just pop path in between, pop a wall, sorry, in between path, they won't connect. This is another AR2910 technique. So you can get this very, if I were to click this again, it would become a path like that, right? And that is very different from the sort of neutral sort of feeling that we have when we do it like this. And then you can delete the wall and it looks great. So that little technique can get you some really fun textures without doing any hacking. So that is as simple as that to get that really quite interesting textures going on in here. But that is beside the point. We've made another park info sort of thing over here, but this is... I'm not 100% sold on this just yet. I think it needs a little bit of something. It needs maybe a pop of colour. It's really quite brown, and the maroon is colour, obviously, but it's not... It basically, it feels like there's something missing. And this is something that we'll be facing a lot as we go through the park. But we're not going to worry too much about it just right now. We've got some other things that we want to worry about. The main thing that I wanted to do in this episode was begin working on our rides. And I've already done a little bit of measuring over here to see if we've got room to do something interesting. What I want to do is a wooden racing roller coaster in the same vein as Grand National at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Something that's great for people who are looking to learn more about roller coasters is Roller Coaster Database. As you can imagine, this is very similar to the Internet Movie Database or any other database on the internet. There's just loads of information made by enthusiasts, loads of images. So I'd very much heartily recommend, if you just press the logo at the top, it'll just show you a random roller coaster. That's amazing. You can see we've got our info here. This is a ride that has been operating at the very historical Blackpool Pleasure Beach Resort since 1935. It's a racing roller coaster, as you can see here. They go parallel to each other, and they the goal is to beat the other train back to the station. You really have no power over this. so it's quite like a moot point, but it adds a fun extra layer to the ride experience. And it has this really iconic moment, which frustratingly isn't captured in any of these images, where you come sweeping out of the station in opposite directions and rejoin to go up the lift hill. Now I'm going to be trying to bring this to life in Roller Coaster Tycoon. So here we are. I've already done a little bit of measuring here and a little bit of testing, because what I don't want to do is show up and start wasting your time. I do quite enough of that already. So I think the way that I did it when I was testing was like this. So I'm doing this to try and capture the feeling from Grand National, where it comes sweeping down out of the station and it's going to go under the station and rejoin its sister track over on this side of here. But let's just make a little channel for it to go down, and I think there should be about right. But the best way to find out is to build another one. Now, here's another specialist term. Grand National is what's called a Mobius coaster. And the difference between a Mobius coaster and two different coasters is, I suppose, in that definition there. A Mobius coaster is just one roller coaster. This is best explained by saying, do you remember? Alright, let's have a little field trip. I suppose the best way to explain the difference between a Mobius coaster and a racing roller coaster is the difference between claustrophobia and agoraphobia and doppelganger. These guys, they duel with each other, they fight each other, they race each other, they're trying to get back to the station, and they are two distinct, separate rides. Whereas Doppelganger, you can see here, this is the place where the magic happens. The tracks swap over. So regardless of which side we click on, we can see that it's one ride with two stations. This is a Mobius coaster. So that is a really simple definition for that. So you may be thinking, Samuel, if they are a Mobius coaster, why are you building two tracks? And to that I would say, worry not. All will be revealed. And I guess I'll reveal it now, to be honest. What we want to do is we want to make it so that these are 6-seater trains with 3 cars per train. And for simplicity's sake, we're just going to say there's one on each track. Here we go. And we are going to... Ooh, we want these to be synchronized. This is very important, otherwise there's not really much point. What we can do now is we can edit one, press the ghost test button, and now these guys will be racing each other. Look at that. And we'll see what we can do about the timings of these. It looks like this one's going a bit quicker, so I'll perhaps put some brakes here. I wonder how fast I'll have to do it. Let's try with 18. Luckily that's the default. And we'll see how these do. I'm glad they're such different colours. I think we want it to be a bit quicker than that, don't we? Maybe 22. Can speed up the game so that we can see it more quickly. Now I'm giving myself enough room here to make sure we aren't interfering with any of the station stuff that's going to be going on. Oh my goodness. Oh, that is art. You cannot disagree with me. I think one of the most immediate tips I can give to someone trying to make more realistic, more flowing, more aesthetically pleasing roller coasters is the idea of spacing on elements. When you play in the base game, the like scenarios, you kind of want to build like this. And though like excellent for scenario play, this sort of building is very severe. There's a lot of forces applied, and it just doesn't look right in terms of realistic roller coasters. Nothing wrong with it if you like that, but I think in terms of the more broad tastes of the community, it is definitely a good move to start thinking in terms of the forces that are going to be applied to the rider and stuff like that. So more spaced out elements like this really add to the flow, make them feel very, very, very real, and also like appropriate in terms of the forces that are going to be applied to the rider. They're much more gentle transitions. Similarly, you don't really want to be coming out of a corner like really tight like that. That's just not incredibly appropriate when you're going so fast. The faster you're going, the more broad you want your corners to be, because that is going to mean that your riders are under less stress. Something that a lot of older rides had as well was a little catch system at the top of its first sort of hill. Say if there was a fault up here and they weren't sent as quickly as they perhaps could have been, to prevent rollbacks, they have little catch systems on many of their hills. So that's like a fun little realistic detail you can pop in if you like that sort of thing. I want to come round under here, but I've not got enough room. But I'm liking the shape that we've got here, so I think I'm going to persist and try and reshape this a little bit. This is better. What I did, instead of like reshaping all this round here, I think I like what we've got here, is I just went down a bit further here. Which isn't necessarily what I wanted to do, but it's only 5 feet. What harm could it possibly do? An important thing to consider when you're building your rides is, because it's an isometric game, it's very easy to get optical illusions where things look like they are like really close together when they're in fact further apart. And one way we can combat this is something that I call layer separation. You can put stuff in between stuff, and it, unsurprisingly, makes it seem like stuff is in between them. So if you're ever struggling with that, try just adding a feature that can help the audience have a frame of reference for what's going on. So here we are. We've spent a good while sort of developing this ride. It's important not to... I've got to find a way to strike a balance between showing everything and not showing enough, because showing everything would just be here for hours upon hours upon hours. But I've finally got this ride into a place where I feel happy with it. I'll let you see what I've done here. As you can see, it's quite like spaced out. Perhaps the real thing would be a bit more compact than this, but we have to work within the limitations of the game. That's the simple fact of the matter. These big wide turns, you do need to leave little gaps in here when you're doing diagonal ones like this, because otherwise they can't line up together. But otherwise, this is all vanilla. This is all in the base game. You can do this. Now, I've added a break here to slow this one down, just because they were getting a bit too far away from each other. And the interesting thing is that in the game, the guests have different mass. So they make the trains travel at different speeds, which is really interesting. And of course, there's stuff like how many guests are in each train, which affect how much mass is on it as well. So it is going to be a race every single time. You're going to have a different result with it with each ride. So if you get it close enough, then it's going to be thrilling. So we cheated a bit with the brakes, but I don't feel like that's illegitimate. You know, I feel like that just makes it more exciting. We've got some like we've got a classic double up here. I wanted to do the double up here, but the way that the game works is you need so much space to do diagonals and to have two tracks alongside each other. It's just a lot to ask. So I did it a bit more spaced out, but it's still relatively small. It's not very intense, good for families. And I think the main reason why I wanted to do this as the first coaster is because it is based on a coaster that was built a long time ago. So it would make sense that this is the sort of ride that would be very near to the entrance, because potentially this park opened in 1935, in the sort of mid-30s, and this was the flagship attraction. People were coming from miles around to see this racing wooden roller coaster. And you know what? In 1935, there's nothing better to do. Of course you're going to go and see this ride. Of course you want to ride this. And with this iconic sweep out of the station here, I think it's a really good sort of eye-catching moment as you walk in. It's really good spectacle for the beginning of the ride and to build anticipation. So now what we've got to do is we've got to turn this from 2 separate rides into one ride. And that is exactly what it sounds like. We've just got to delete one of them and build the other one alongside it, and that's quite boring. So I won't bore you with that. So here we go. We're just finishing this up. Now, I didn't really want to go underneath this part, but I was kind of hamstrung by where the stations are. So you're going to make little compromises somewhere. Maybe there's something we can do to help justify this. But we've got a very important task now. Something that I kind of want to do with you guys is... Oh, and we'll just do this sort of technical thing here. We want to make sure that there's 2 trains on here. And we want to send... No, it won't work because it's on synchronization now, but there's this weird bug where if you close it, it does send it. And now it won't go unless it's got one to synchronize with. So on to the very important task here. What colours are we going to make it? Now, there's a strong impulse just to make it white like all these classic roller coasters. But that's a bit flat, right? And it is very iconic, don't get me wrong, it's really cool. But I think with the new colour schemes in Open, we can perhaps push it a little bit further. Maybe just, even with these like beiges, and maybe like that. Ooh, don't know. Interesting. Now, we're only going to have 2 trains on this ride, for the simple fact that if you start adding more trains, it can start behaving in a really funny way about block breaks, and it will disalign the ride. If we just have 2, it keeps it simple. It's perhaps not realistic to have it like that, however, it does make more sense to us because we want it to look right every time, and guest throughput isn't important to us. This is an aesthetic choice. But if we were doing scenario play, we'd perhaps want to have as many trains as possible. If we were running a theme park, we'd want as many trains as possible. But that doesn't really matter to us. So we're just going to have it with 2 trains, 1 on each track, so that way it never has any excuses whatsoever. Here comes a choice. Something that's a challenge about 2-track coasters is, where are you going to put the entrance and exit? Because you can't have one on each side and then you can make decisions there. You've got to put them both on one side, and what order do you want them to be in? It's perhaps a choice that you haven't really considered before, but where you place them is important. You want, typically in scenario play, you want the entrance to be as close to the front as possible because that's where the loading station's going to be, and that increases your throughput significantly. But there might be a more complex choice in this scenario. Now, I don't think that we want for the exit paths to be on this side, because I just think we want to make the most of this area here, and I think having the queue use this area and having the queue looking down on this sweep around could be a really good way to build hype as well. But I kind of do want for this to be a space where everyone can look, but I suppose I can use these areas here for everybody to be able to look down on. I think that's the best compromise we've got here. Something else that I've been doing as well is just looking at this in terms of developing the landscaping around it. Landscaping is a tool that I feel like some people are a bit nervous to use to its full potential. You can go buck wild. You can have like mountains going around here. What I've personally decided to do is just make little hills around to make it seem like this coaster is cooperating with these hills in some way. And what I was considering as well is perhaps having this part go underground, because the Grand National obviously goes underneath paths and stuff, but I feel like a fun twist on that we could have is having it just go underground in perhaps a section like this. So that's, of course, quite an intense way for it to interact with its environment. And potentially we could even have like path going over the top of here. This could be the reason why it's like that. That's an interesting thing to consider. It becomes like a little bit less realistic in this sort of way, just because historically they would be a bit more limited in their ability. They would be looking for flat ground to have the most even playing field. Because if you think of it just simply this way, they were doing it all with pen and paper. And in that regard, you don't want to be having to cooperate with the environment in such a way, because it's more difficult to test. If it's all on flat ground, you can say, we make it flat, we build it from the ground up, every part is an equal distance from the ground relative to itself. And for many, that's the dream, because it just makes it much more simple and less expensive. And these things are very important when you're running a business in that regard. So that's just something to consider. But for us, for our mileage, I think we're going for good spectacle, good aesthetics, and we're worrying about like the hard realism of it a lot less. But I just wanted to raise it as something that you could consider. What do we think about this as our queue situation? I'm trying to think if there's a better way of doing it. I would prefer that this turn is more open, but I fear that if we just have it like this, for example, it's just a bit too short. But do we mind? Do we mind that that's a bit short? I don't know that that's necessarily any great evil. And also I've had to just get rid of this sort of like slender, like hourglass moment here. And I think what I want to do as well is I want to redo this planter situation. Let's raise this up and see what we've got going on here. Right, whoops. Sorry everyone, that's better. I think maybe we could fold that into the middle. There is a middle, isn't there? But we kind of don't want to be obstructing that view of the carousel. Or does that even matter? That is the question. It's the question on everyone's lips right now. So that would be the middle. So this is now aligned in this sort of way, but maybe do we want to have a... Ooh, this could be fun. Because they're jousters, isn't there a statue with a guy on a horse? I'm like 99.9% sure there is. Where have they hidden them? Where are they? Oh, they're here. They're here in gardens, obviously. So maybe we could have like a figure like this at the beginning. So these guys on horses. Maybe we could have them higher up. And now it's the task of remembering which ones are in the base game. Because I've got the loopy landscapes textures included because I love loopy landscapes, but I don't want to overuse them too much in this context, just because I don't know if you guys have them or not. And I'd prefer to have something that's more accessible than less accessible. So that could be quite interesting. And just having this part here as the... That sort of preserves the shape a bit as well. You know what? I'm confident that we can move forwards with this, and if we think it's a big disaster, we can come back and change it. But the next big challenge, I think, is going to be the station. We are sort of bound by context to have the station raised up in some way, because this passes underneath. So I think the kind of broad thing we want to do here is... I just want to test something really quickly. I feel like that might have legs. Worst case scenario, we can like remove these two. And then it's a bit more square, but I don't think we'll have to. I think this should be fine, right? Yes, my apologies. There's a vague principle I have where you want to keep your entrance and exit hut together because... Whoops. If we just do this really quickly, you can box this section up, and I'm doing just the most ugly version of this imaginable. But that's okay, because we're demonstrating a principle. Like that, and then you can have the rest of it open, right? And you can do interesting stuff. We'll just do it this colour, and then we can have the rest of a station like that. And when you have those huts together, it allows you to box them in together. If you have them separate, it becomes harder to contextualize them. Just because you would have to commit so much to covering them up. What I don't really want to do is change this to Castle Brown, because then we're covering up these parts here. So I think I'll just leave that so I know what my little plan is. Very interesting indeed. So there we are. I think that's as far as we're going to go with this for today. I think we'll move on to doing some more buildings. But I think we've done a really good job there. We've made a strong foundation in terms of the concepts of just ride design at a higher level, where you're leaving yourself more space for elements. You know what? I haven't added the chain lift here. Just spotted that. In terms of like the raw ride design, in terms of like the spacing of elements out, the using of wider turns when you're going more quickly, and bringing in more historical narrative elements, like this iconic sweep as a focal point for people who are coming to the park, as something that would be a crowd bringer when the park is opening, this sort of like mid-30s idea. Suddenly we've got a historical narrative to the park, and that can help inform and contextualize our decisions later on, like our other ride decisions. So what I'm thinking next for adding rides is, I don't know if you're familiar with Blackpool Pleasure Beach, but there's loads of car rides just hanging out underneath roller coasters and stuff, and I think that could be like a fun addition maybe here to put like a car ride. Because they just had to make the most of the space, and that made a really nice stacking of rides, which is a really fun aesthetic in my opinion. We've also begun to do some landscaping here, nothing extreme. We're probably going to change quite a lot of it, but that's the fun of it. And also layer separation in terms of using trees and stuff like that. This was a big challenge to do as the first ever roller coaster, but I think it was a really good starting off point for us, because it allowed us to talk about a lot of stuff. So that's really fun. But we shall nip back over to the architecture side of things and the basic park design stuff. I think our next decision point lies here. Now this is a big problem. This is meant to be one of the main entrances to the park, and you immediately find yourself at a choke point when it's go either this way or this way for no real reason. Here it's a bit more open as you come through. So we have to make a decision here. Are we gonna... I think I'm happy with the buildings and the way that the building aesthetic is. Though, maybe we could grab this whole thing and move it more this way. Okie dokie, we're getting to be about done with this. I'm still not completely sold on these signs, if I can be completely honest. But one fire at a time, as we say in the biz. Do we want that to be there? This needs something to help support it, but I think for now it's fine. Come on, you gotta help me out here. You gotta help me out. I've played around with the forms a little bit. I had to change it a little bit to fit it in. I've had to also extend this part out a little bit. We just need to change this to services. I'm not sure whether I like it as much on this side. But on this side it is way more open and allows for this tree to stay. I'm not sure how sold I am on... I like this figure as it comes through, but I'm not sure how much it's actually going to serve us moving forward. I'm interested to see how it's going to change from here on out. I do feel like this has less riz than it did before. I've simplified this part a little bit as well because I felt like it wasn't necessarily hitting. This part looks great as it comes through. I've added a little planter here just to help the flow of it a little bit more. This tree being over here, I can't fit in a post to hold this up, but I guess that's not a huge problem. But I feel like this bay here doesn't quite have the same magic as it did. But I suppose that's not a huge problem. I might develop it a little bit more. I've just had a little idea. Let's have a look how this feels. That is crazy how it feels like immediately better like that. I wonder why that is. I'll have to have a think about why that works for me. I don't know whether we need this tree here as well, to be honest. I'll leave it for now because it's definitely not hurting the situation. Interesting. Around the other side, this is decent, obviously. I wonder if we build this up a little bit more, we'll feel a bit better about it. Perhaps will there be something here? Is that what my heart is telling me right now? Interesting. Or maybe this part is not here. We can do this a bit quicker using this. Zoop. It's a bit more like that, and maybe this path will valiantly go off in this direction like that. Who can tell? Only the fates may know what is going on here. But there's definitely like a channeling through this way that I like, and towards that side's really fun. Yeah, we don't have to worry too much about that right now. We don't have to complete every idea that we have. Don't let anyone let you think that that's what the modus operandi is. The modus operandi is to have fun and to keep rolling. I don't want that to become the motto of this, but I keep saying it for some reason. So I guess we're just going to keep rolling for now. Welcome back. As you can see, I've done a little bit of building here, and I'm not sure how sold I am on it. It looks nice, but especially this building here, with the signs and stuff from the Six Flags set, there's a within the community there's a broad consensus that you suspend your disbelief that this is called Medusa. This one's called, I've named it the Royal Joust, to sort of have like a royal parallel to the Grand National, where instead of it being like a horse race, it's a medieval thing involving horses, which is naturally a joust. And jousts don't go side by side, but it's a roller coaster. Don't worry too much, okay? It's just a bit of fun. But what I've done here is I've created this entrance area, and I've created this building here, and I think this building really effectively demonstrates what we don't want to do with this area. So I'm glad I did it, because I am going to delete it, but I just thought I'd let you see it. It's not necessarily the most beautiful building in the world, but it is kind of cool. Feel free to copy this one. It'll probably end up somewhere else, right? I've taken flavors from it and included it in the rest of the station. I also, before I forget, I developed this exit area a bit. I think it still needs a bit of TLC. Needs a little bit of magic, but for the time being, I'm certainly proud of what I've got there. So I'm happy with that for the time being. So yeah, what I'm going to do is instead is maybe draw this path up more into this area. This would naturally make the queue shorter, but we can just, you know, justify this by saying, oh, it's the way that they used to do queues back in the day. The reality is, we don't have the ways of making the queue long that people would have in real life. You know, being able to jam it into a tighter area to get more queue in there. So we're going to deal with the hand that we're dealt, and we're going to suspend our disbelief a little bit, and it's going to turn out great. So I'll rejoin you once I've taken a swing at that, hey? Hello, we're back again with the new and improved the Royal Joust. A queue entrance area. As you can see, I've extended this path down more, and that's allowed for even people who aren't planning to get on the ride, they just want to check it out. They can come here with their cameras and they can watch it as it comes down this way, which is way more accessible for them. And also I've added viewing areas. This one's a really nice one just because it has this curve that comes under. And I've made a little curved area from which it can be viewed here. And I've got this one on this side as well. I don't know whether I want to continue this boardwalky part just a bit more along here. Maybe have this continue in more of the trough area. But we'll see. We'll see what shakes out. In terms of the rest of the station, it's fairly unremarkable. I've just tried to make it significant in the maroon that's on the station, and not on any of the other buildings. Perhaps changing out some of these crenellations on some of these other buildings could add a bit more interest. But I'm really feeling that these ones here, they need to be... life needs to be breathed into them somehow, so I'm excited to see how I can do that. I've got... It's half covered and half open air. And it sort of doesn't make any sense at all because this part's enclosed and people can't get from one part to the other, but that is one of those ways in which our suspension is... Our disbelief is suspended, as we view these in the context in which they're given, which is an NCSO no-hack scenario. We could, of course, do this. No entrance. But I feel like that, for our first ride, we want to kind of do it in a more classic way, which is like this, to give you that option as an artistic choice. And then as we go on, I think that particular challenge is going to be less significant as we go on. A, because we're just going to be improving as we go along. And B, because it's not going to have the additional challenge of it being a synchronized station. Let's get these guys deployed. I made the station a bit shorter, so I had to change it to block section mode to get it to work properly. And this is the situation in which it's really important that it is only 2 trains, otherwise it starts getting more concerned with the block sections than it is the synchronization, because it'll get to the top of this lift hill, and if one's back before the other, it'll set off before the other. I find that really frustrating. But I've added these signs that, if you look at Grand National, you'll see that over top it has signs. Some of them say, oh, don't stand up, all that stuff. Who cares? What we want are the characterful ones where it says and they're off. So I've added these ones in. They're just short phrases. It just says charge as it comes and does the joust. Good hit. And this one here, last charge, as we head back towards the station. So that's really good fun. I'm happy with how that has developed, and I think that is where we will end this episode. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us, and I'm really looking forward to what we get up to next time. I think we might step away from this area next time. I'll continue to sort of develop a few ideas as we go along. I just don't want for us to get too overwhelmed by all the castle theming stuff and forget the beauty that comes with other options. So I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching. I just want to say, although I have worked for a long time on this, it's on year 10 because I keep leaving it running by accident. I do work quicker than it seems.